You know, everybody, I watched what Spinnernet 1 had to say about the invasion, and I talked about this almost 2 years ago. And you would expect maybe we'd wait till at least 2014 so that, you know, not from a birthday standpoint or anniversary standpoint, but more of a, yearly, whatever you want to this, count 1 year of when it started and next year and all that. You would think some people might wait a little bit, but a lot of people, it seems, doesn't matter how long it's been, want to talk about the invasion angle. Now, I talked about it primarily a couple of years ago, basically saying what I felt I would do, or which should have been done. And and I'm totally in agreement with what they said, with what everybody said. Basically, at this moment, at the time it was taking place, you did not have the resources, you did not have the talent to truly make this the invasion, the invasion, the dream matchups that people were hoping for. We were dreaming and praying and hoping for it. I mean, the closest you really got was SummerSlam of that year with Booker T and The Rock, and that was it. Because when you looked at the magazines back in the late 90s and into 2000s, the one dream matchup people wanted to see, because they were starting to see similarities, was Rock and Booker T, and they did get that. They got that rematch. They got that matchup. But you see, there was so much more they wanted to see, but they couldn't. And a lot of people pretty much said, and again, this is something I do agree upon, is that even though a lot of the talent was locked in with these AOL Time Warner contracts, that's it. That even though they were locked in with these AOL Time Warner contracts, they could have easily, and I mean easily, waited. They could have slowly built this. I don't know if I saw this correctly online, but one thing I do remember reading was some of the results online back in 2001. And they said that I don't know if this is a fact, but they said the weekend before the Raw, the infamous Raw, where the main event matchup, the last matchup on Raw, was for the WCW title between Booker T and Buff Bagwell. Again, I don't know if this is true or not, but from what I read online, I think they tried running a house show in Tacoma, Washington. Hold on for a second. They tried to run a house show, I think, in Tacoma, Washington. And I don't know if it was a double header kind of thing. I don't know what it was, but apparently they had a WCW live event. And and obviously it might have been. I guess it was a semi success. I don't know. But basically, what a lot of people are saying is that when you take a look at basically what I'm trying to say here, and I'm sorry for the noise in the background. They're working on the school there. I don't know why. But anyway, like I said, when I look at this and then I hear what Spinnernet and Off the Ropes Show and British Fizz and No DQ has said, and everybody else has pretty much talked about. If you could have, done something like that, slowly built them up, let them have, let's say, SmackDown, if you will. Let them have SmackDown. Let them turn that into a WCW program. Or heck, let them have Sunday Night Heat, turn that into a WCW program. You know, have it to where, honestly, from a storyline standpoint, you know, you could have WWF, WWE or WWF at the time. You could basically have it, shares of pay-per-views with WCW. In other words, maybe have one or two or three very important WCW matches. Like if you have 8 matches on the card, half of those should be WCW, and that should be the WCW main focus, main storylines for their brand. While the other brands, which would be later on, would be, WWF. And again, it makes a lot of sense because even though you'd probably regulate them to, let's say, Sunday Night Heat or, even Velocity or whatever you want to call it, you would still be playing on that theme. You'd still be playing on, on the fact that WWF had these 2-hour programs, and all WCW had was the hour-long shows. Okay. And think about it. You could have built it up a little bit. Build up the fact that, WCW was still going on, but, they were using, Heat, they were using Velocity. Heck, even if they were originally intending on giving them SmackDown, which obviously was the original plan, and to do so, it still could have been built up and built up and built up. Again, still, like I'm saying, it could have been built up and built up. Doesn't matter if you were on. Doesn't matter if they would have been given, if they would have been given Heat, Velocity, or even SmackDown. They would continue to be built up and built up and built up. But the point I'm trying to make is, from what people have said, they could have constantly built it up from this kind of a scenario to the point that as soon as the contracts of the Ric Flairs, of the Hulk Hogans, the Scott Halls, the Kevin Nashes, the Scott Steiners, if you will, maybe even the Goldbergs, as soon as they all came up, you could have snatched them up, brought them, I'm sorry for the wind, they could have snatched them up, signed them to be part of the WCW side, and then you could have started the invasion. As far as ECW's involvement, you know what? You had a good group right there. You basically had some of the originals. Except for Sandman and Sabu. But again, you could have easily signed them as soon as the invasion officially started. And as time would go on, like everybody's been saying, slowly build it up, depending on what show you would have given them. Slowly build it up, until the time was right. And the time, in my opinion, for this whole thing to start, to really get people invested in it and build it up, I think the best time for it to have started would have been the Survivor Series that it ended. Because think about it. You would have given WCW their own programs. You would have let them build themselves up as their own brand with their own shows. From basically April to November. And then you could have started the invasion. You could have had it to where Shane, again, wanted to prove WCW's superiority. And you know what? It would have worked better because that way you would have basically given fans, the WWF fans, who did know who they were, but you would have given them the opportunity to kind of get to know who these characters were, and then kind of say, you know what? I want to get behind this group. I want to get behind this brand because WWE, or F at the time, is looking down on them like they're nothing. Like they don't matter. And I want to get behind this brand. You would have built, WWF would have basically allowed the fan base to get to know who the characters, get to know who the brand, who knew about but didn't really know much about WCW but knew about its existence, really would have allowed them to get behind the characters. And then slowly, you could have built towards the invasion, because then, get a load of this, storyline-wise, you could have had some of the WWF superstars and divas be like, you know what, we're not getting opportunities here. We're not getting a chance to shine. But yet, basically, what I'm trying to say is, storyline-wise, you would have them be like, we're not getting opportunities here. We're not getting a chance to shine. And then, like I say, slowly throw those hints in there by saying, you know what, let's have those superstars and divas who feel like they're not getting an opportunity, let's have them jump ship, if you will, or start talking behind the scenes, storyline-wise, with Shane, and then have them be a surprise signee, kind of like what they did with the brand extension, back in 2002, 2003. Now they slowly did that, basically allow them, to start that up, allow them to build on that. You know what I'm saying? Allow them to do what we saw with the brand extension. I mean, remember, there were several times to where, there were several times that you had Eric Bischoff doing the brand extension say, hey, look who I got signed over from SmackDown. And then you would have Stephanie McMahon do the same thing. I mean, heck, I remember too vividly Stephanie McMahon signing Chris Benoit. I mean, not Chris Benoit, but The Undertaker. I remember her doing that. Because The Undertaker wanted to obviously was starting his feud with Brock. The only problem was Brock was now SmackDown property, and Undertaker was Raw. So that was to me, that was a great SmackDown moment when she did that. Hold on for a second. But to me, that was like a great SmackDown moment when she did that. So, what I'm trying to say here, basically, is I truly think, in my honest to God opinion, that if they would have taken those kind of ideas, if you will, and ran with them in the invasion deal with WCW, just imagine how more important and how more personal from a storyline standpoint that storyline would be, and the invasion would have been. Because now you're having WWF guys, E-guys, if you will, going behind Vince's back and signing with Shane and WCW so they can get opportunity. Kind of get what I'm saying? And to me, that would have really helped out. And like a lot of people said, it would have slowly given them time to start acquiring about the status of people like Flair, Hogan, Hall, Nash, Steiner, Goldberg, you name it. It would start allowing them to, start looking at the status of these guys, of these individuals. And that by doing so, you could finally sign these individuals to contracts. You could do that. these individuals to contracts, put them on the WCW side of things, and go from there. And again, you know what would be, and again, that would work so well, because then you could really, like I say, start the invasion. You know, and it would give your fan base enough time to kind of get behind these individuals and be like, you know what? I want to support the WCW brand. I feel sorry for these guys because they're looked down upon by WWF. And it would have worked. You still would have had Joe Rock versus Booker T and maybe a Taker versus DDP, but it would have worked a lot better, and it would have made these interpromotional matches even more important. And then if you wanted to add ECW later on, then that's fine, but don't add them in there, you know, as being part of the invasion. No. Or being part of an alliance with WCW. No. Have ECW start to slowly invade. You know, have Dreamer have RVD show up at a WWF event and attack. Have Dreamer show up at WCW and attack. And then slowly but surely have guys like Mahoney, Rotten, you know, have them show up. Kind of get the idea. I'll be back in a second. I know I got more time I can use, but I'll be back in a second. I gotta take care of something.